Hey everyone, welcome back to Moms Against the Machine. It's week 2 of this month, so it's the short news update day, where I catch you up on everything you missed while you were busy keeping yourself sane. If you're new here or you have not differentiated our voices yet, I'm Chelsea. Jen is on a nice little vacation over the weekend to San Antonio, and I am doing our solo spot today. So I am a professional troublemaker, full-time mom, part-time political thorn in the side of people like my congressional rep, Lance Gooden. I've been in the streets protesting, in the meetings, and in the Facebook comments. So when I say I read the news so you don't have to, I mean I took the hits, sifted through the propaganda, and brought back the receipts. This week you're going to get the important stuff. No algorithm, no cable news panic music, just the hits. And yeah, it's still bad, but at least you'll be informed enough to yell about it at dinner. And to go a little bit off my script that I have crafted today, I know it's overwhelming. I have my days too. I have spent the past week dressing up as politicians to sing along to Alexander Hamilton on TikTok because I have completely crashed out. I don't know. You're not alone. I know it's hard to read the news, and I'm hoping that we can bring it to you in a sane way, short way, and just to make you feel a little bit better and like you're not alone. So the first story that I plan on covering today has to do with national policy and politics, and we're going to talk about the One Big Beautiful Bill, the propaganda versus the reality. So our congressional rep is full MAGA, and we kind of use his propaganda to gauge where we are in the country and what they are spouting about. So Lance Gooden's been busy. And by busy, I mean he's been sending out taxpayer-funded glossy mailers bragging about the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill. According to him, and MAGA currently, this masterpiece is going to give you a $13,000 raise, finish the border wall, and add 10,000 ICE agents to protect you. But the fine print on that raise is it's not a raise at all. It's a temporary tax deduction capped at $25,000 for reported tips or bonuses, including overtime. And it only applies if you make under $160,000. For most people, it works out to a couple $1,000s max, and it expires in 2028. Meanwhile, your rent, groceries, and childcare costs are still climbing permanently. And on our mailer, it leaves out education, so this bill launches a nationwide voucher program that pulls billions out of public schools and hands it to private institutions. Many of them religious, they're unregulated, and they are free to discriminate. Medicaid work requirements will gut school-based health clinics, nurses, and mental health counselors. Pell Grants, which help millions afford college, are slashed, putting higher education even further out of reach for working families. A lot of people at this point in time have to use loans to pay for literally everything while they are in college because even though they work, the pay is so minimal. It doesn't cover enough, and people are living in poverty trying to go to school. And that just drives me insane to even think about. It was a reality when I was in school, and it's even worse now. So healthcare and food, it slaps on work requirements for Medicaid and SNAP. That sounds nice. It doesn't, but when you realize that it's just designed to kick people off the rolls because then they work too much. Estimates say up to 12 million could lose Medicaid coverage, including kids, seniors, and people with disabilities. About 1 million children will lose free or reduced school lunch meals. SNAP cuts will mean even less food on the table for low-income parents, veterans, and rural communities, while the costs just keep rising. On the media side, it does eliminate every penny of federal funding for NPR and PBS. That's not just Sesame Street and PBS Kids disappearing. It's rural towns losing their only source of local news, weather alerts, and storm coverage. When a hurricane's coming, or a wildfire jumps a ridge, or a tornado drops out of the sky, those public stations are the ones warning people to take over. And what's worse is when we lose power, sometimes the radio is the only thing that works. So if you think your phone is a backup, remember, in disaster zones, cell service is usually the very first thing to go. So yeah, our MAGA congressman calls that a raise. I call it you get a coupon for a few grand off of your taxes right before they take $30,000 worth of public services away. And maybe your tornado warning too. And then the next thing that gets my goat is the Big Balls National Guard scam. So speaking of Doge, Trump wants you to believe right now that DC is a lawless war zone, that it's dangerous enough to justify putting the National Guard on permanent watch. And I should be releasing this early Monday morning on the 11th, and I am filming this on August 10th. So there's a press conference scheduled for tomorrow covering this, and this is just the preliminary part of it. But right now, let's look at this, because what they hope you don't read is that under Biden's DOJ, they had violent crime in DC drop 35% in 2024, the lowest level in over 30 years. Homicides are down 32%, robberies are down 39%, armed carjackings are down 53%. Assaults with a dangerous weapon are at a historic low. It's not chaos, that's success, but it doesn't sell. So now we have big balls. I know. Pause for dramatic effect. A 19-year-old Trump loyalist given national clearance to comb through the budget for waste, fraud, and abuse, despite his only real resume item being the nickname he earned in high school. He's now the face attached to a hyped-up, emotionally charged case, pushing into headlines just in time for Trump to argue DC needs federalized troops. We've seen it before. And forgive me for making the comparison, but with the Groveland boys and the Central Park Five in Scottsboro, they pointed to youths, which were young black males for these cases, and used it to justify vigilante behavior and abuse and murdering men that should not have been murdered. So the Groveland boys was in 1949. They were falsely accused in Florida. 2 of the boys were there, and 2 of them weren't even in town that were accused. Not at the time of the crime, they were not. So it was just a law and order rallying cry that justified the police crackdowns and vigilante violence, and the KKK fully just dove into it and terrorized entire communities, bombed them, threatened them, all of it. And then the Central Park Five, they were smeared as a marauding wolf pack to gin up fear, with Trump himself buying a full-page ad and calling for the death penalty before the trial. And now we have big balls in 2025, a case that's less about facts and more about feeding the narrative that the district is out of control. The pattern is always the same. Find a flashpoint, push it before the facts clear, inflame the public fear, make it a symbol of everything wrong with crime, cities, or whoever your target group is. Push a policy grab, whether it's mass incarceration, the death penalty, or militarizing the nation's capital. The kicker is this isn't even happening during a crime wave. The DOJ's own January 3rd report shows that the crime rates were plunging. So there's no coincidence that the guard is being pushed right now after that attack. It's just a convenient excuse for control, a move that looks a lot like pretext authoritarian leaders use when they want to occupy territory under the banner of public safety. And Trump's solution is to put the city under federal military oversight, something locals do not want. Congress has not voted on it, and the data does not justify it. The fact that the public face of it is a teenager with the nickname Big Balls just tells you everything that you need to know. This is not about governing. This is about theater, distraction, and setting a precedent that they can roll out anywhere they want troops on the ground, like in Los Angeles. So sorry about the tiny history lesson. There's a nice little resemblance there. Not a nice resemblance, but there's a resemblance there. So our next story is the $200 million White House ballroom and the Qatar jet glow up. So while they're getting your kid's school budget, cutting Medicaid, killing public broadcasting, your tax dollars are going to a $200 million luxury ballroom at the White House. Gold trim, Mar-a-Lago decor, and so many flagpoles, it looks like a mattress store on Memorial Day weekend. They paved over the Rose Garden for this, replacing a space that once hosted historic cultural events with a gilded hall perfect for black tie donor galas. A taxpayer-funded jet makeover as well for Qatar's ruling family, complete with luxury interiors, upgraded private suites, and bespoke design features. This isn't Air Force One, it's a foreign royal's personal plane, refurbished on your dime through U.S. contracts and favors. This is not just waste, fraud, and abuse, it's a clear statement of values. They'll spend hundreds of millions to impress their friends but call you lazy for needing food assistance. So that's where your money's going. Gold trim, donor dinners, and a royal jet spa day. All they tell you that there's just no funding for your school, your clinic, or your town's only radio tower. And if you think that's bad, buckle up, because the next 2 stories are not about waste, they're about deliberate sabotage. These aren't accidents. These are choices that make your life harder. So next up, we have Alligator Alcatraz. We're going to keep updating on that one as we get more information because it's spreading. NPR's latest profile focused on a Guatemalan couple whose crime was fishing. Not smuggling, not assault, not skipping court. They were fishing. They were picked up, processed, and dropped into Florida's newest detention showpiece. a massive tent complex in the Everglades that locals are calling Alligator Alcatraz. From the outside, it looks like something FEMA might put up after a hurricane: temporary structures, tarps, chain link fencing, but inside it's a slow motion disaster. The heat regularly climbs into triple digits, and when the air conditioner fails, which happens often, the tents turn into suffocating ovens. The ground is swampy, crawling with vermin and swarms of mosquitoes that carry dengue and West Nile. Inmates get 1 shower a week if the plumbing is working. You can smell the place before you see it. 71% of the people held there have no criminal record. They're asylum seekers, migrant workers, parents, grandparents, human beings who have been reduced to detainee status for the crime of existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's not just this camp in Florida. The same playbook is unfolding elsewhere, just less visible. In New York City and Dallas, people are being held 4 days in ice field offices, not formal detention centers, with no beds, no access to showers, and little or no legal counsel. These are essentially makeshift holding cells, windowless rooms with fluorescent lights that never go off, chairs or bare floors to sleep on, and limited food and water. It's a holding strategy that skirts oversight rules. Because the facilities are not officially classified as detention centers, they can avoid certain inspections, reporting requirements, and visitation rights. For families, this means loved ones can disappear for days without anyone knowing where they are. For lawyers, it means scrambling to locate clients who might be shuffled from an ICE office to a contracted detention facility hundreds of miles away with zero notice. For detainees, it's disorienting and terrifying, designed to make you give up fighting your case. Back in Florida, access to lawyers is deliberately obstructed. Family members often can't get through on the phone lines, and even when legal visits are allowed, paperwork routinely goes missing, delaying hearings and appeals. In the meantime, people are languishing in the swamp heat, watching their health decline while their cases stall. And while the Guatemalan couple's story made it into the national news, most will not. And that's the point. The system works best for ICE and its contractors when these stories stay small, buried in local outlets, or hidden behind paywalls. Out of sight, out of mind, until it's someone that you know. This isn't just one bad facility in one bad state. Indiana is already drawing up plans for a copycat operation, the so-called Speedway Slammer, a high-volume processing site where people will be cycled in and out like inventory in a warehouse. This is part of a larger trend. Build fast, cut corners, keep the public out, and profit off federal contracts while stripping away due process and human dignity. If we're talking about immigration policy, then we have to be honest. This isn't border security. It's an intentional nationwide network of black hole facilities, from the swamp to the city field office, designed to make people disappear. And while we're on the topic of immigration, we're going to talk about the third country deportations. The Supreme Court's recent decision gave the U.S. government permission to deport asylum seekers to third countries, even if they've never been there, have no family or community there, and face serious risks if they're dropped at the airport with nothing but the clothes that they are wearing. Justice Sotomayor's dissent has made it painfully clear. This is a fundamental shift away from the promise of asylum, one that strips away the protections enshrined in both U.S. and international law. Instead of finding safety, refugees can now be legally dumped into nations with no resources, no safety nets, and no responsibility for what happens next. Imagine fleeing violence or persecution, surviving the dangerous journey here, and instead of being given a fair hearing, you're told you're being shipped to a place you've never been. Maybe a country where you don't speak the language, where there's no one waiting for you, and no infrastructure to keep you safe. For parents, it means possible separation from their children. For survivors of abuse or trafficking, it can mean being sent back into the same dangers that they risked everything to escape. The scariest part, this isn't being rolled out with loud speeches or big media fanfare. It's happening in the shadows, tucked inside legal rulings and administrative memos, designed to shrink the definition of refuge so small that almost no one qualifies. The people most affected are kept out of sight, and the public is completely left in the dark. And here's the thing. These camps don't just wreck human lives. They wreck the land that they're built on too. Because when you're rushing to build something this big, this fast, and this cruel, you don't stop to ask questions about where it's going or who it will harm in the process. And that's where the next fight is happening, not just in the courts for civil rights, but in the courts for the land itself. The Miccosukee Tribe and Friends of the Everglades are suing over the construction of Alligator Alcatraz. And their case is not just about paperwork, it's about survival. The camp was slapped down in the middle of a sensitive Everglades habitat without a full environmental review, plowing straight through an area home to endangered species like the Florida panther and the wood stork and the snail kite. The Everglades is not just a swamp. It's a living, breathing ecosystem that filters drinking water for millions of Floridians and serves as a cultural and spiritual anchor for the Miccosukee Tribe. By building here, the government didn't just disregard environmental law, they disregarded treaty obligations and the tribe's sovereignty. This is not some oops, we forgot to check moment. This is policy by cronyism. where political allies get the contracts, the bulldozers roll in, and anyone who objects is told it's too late to stop it. Sounds a lot like the Keystone Pipeline to me. The lawsuits allege that the detention camp violates the National Environmental Policy Act, the Endangered Species Act, and potentially sections of the Clean Water Act. Why? Because the area floods frequently, which means runoff, raw sewage, and human waste could spill into delicate waterways that feed the Everglades. The same waterways that support fish, birds, and the livelihoods of local communities. The Miccosukee Tribe has been fighting for generations to protect this land from overdevelopment and pollution. And now they're watching as their home is turned into a political stunt. Friends of the Everglades, an environmental watchdog group founded by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas herself, has joined them, because what's at stake here is not just this one facility. If they lose, it sets a precedent that federal contractors can override environmental protections whenever they claim national security as the excuse. And while those lawsuits make their way through the courts, construction keeps going, detainees keep arriving, and the habitat keeps shrinking. It's a perfect storm of human rights violations and environmental destruction, and every bit of it is funded by taxpayers. Any of you thought the damage stopped at detention camps and bulldozers, think again. The same disregard for laws and people is showing up in our healthcare, our environment, and even in how your district is drawn on a map. These aren't separate stories. They're connected pieces of the same stay in power and take what you can strategy. So the Trump administration Department of Health and Human Services is quietly gutting the National Institutes of Health, freezing and redirecting funds that Congress has already approved. These aren't harmless budget tweaks. They are targeted cuts that weaken the programs keeping us alive and prepared for the next crisis. One of the most glaring casualties, the NIH's own mRNA vaccine program, the same program that powered COVID-19 breakthroughs and can be adapted quickly for emerging viruses, certain cancers, and other deadly diseases. Gutting it in 2025 when new outbreaks are emerging globally is sabotage disguised as budget discipline. The NIH hospital in Bethesda is also seeing a steep drop in patient admissions, not because fewer people need help, but because fewer staff, fewer active trials, and less funding means fewer open beds. This isn't a regular hospital. It's the final stop for patients who have run out of treatment options. When that door closes, there's no backup plan. And here's the part that should terrify you. Alongside these cuts, the administration is reviving the Autism Registry, a program rooted in eugenics-era thinking. Originally conceived as a way to track autistic individuals under the guise of research, it's now re-emerging as a tool for political and ideological control. By compiling a list of people with specific diagnoses, they create the infrastructure for targeting, restricting, and excluding entire groups from resources, opportunities, or even freedom of movement. This is data collection for discrimination. It's happening at the same time as they're starving the very research that could actually improve quality of life for autistic people and others with disabilities. This message is very clear. They are not interested in finding cures, treatments, or support systems. They're interested in control, deciding whose lives are worth protecting and whose are not. This is policy by eugenics. They're cutting health programs, reviving eugenics-era registries, and deciding who gets care. Meanwhile, the Epstein client list stays sealed, and the same people protecting abusers are floating a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell. Let's get into the latest updates on that. So the Epstein case is back in the headlines, and not because we finally got the full truth by any means, but because the people in power are still working overtime to bury it, i.e. big balls. In May, multiple sources confirmed Trump was told that his name appeared in at least one internal file connected to Epstein's network. Weeks later, his legal team pivoted to calling the entire thing a hoax, after previously admitting Epstein's crimes were real and horrific and the files were on Pam Boddy's desk. Ghislaine Maxwell has now been quietly moved to a different federal facility outside of Texas A&M. Her attorney, Trump's attorney, the, federally employed attorney, Todd Blanche, claims she told him that she's confident that she'll be released early and has even floated the possibility of a pardon under a second Trump term. And here's the PR stunt part. There's talk of releasing the private conversations between Maxwell and Blanche, a move that they're selling as transparency but is really designed to calm public outrage without revealing anything new. And if they do reveal anything new, it is going to be to target other people and not to implicate Trump. So the idea is that a few handpicked lawyer-approved quotes will make us forget the bigger question: who else was involved? Congress had a chance to force transparency by voting on the unsealing of Epstein-related documents. Instead, they shut down early for recess, avoiding the vote entirely. That is not bureaucratic scheduling. That's an active choice to keep the public in the dark. And the timeline tells the story. So in May, Trump is privately told he's named in the files. The following weeks, the hoax narrative begins. Maxwell was relocated just a little bit ago, with new prison arrangements, less media access, and luxury conditions. Then we have a nice little PR distraction, so the plan to release the cherry-picked Maxwell Blanche conversations, which will probably come out shortly. And now there's a congressional recess. The Epstein vote completely dodged. So while that list stays sealed and the political class closes ranks, survivors are still waiting for justice, and the public is still denied answers about who enabled, financed, and participated in one of the most prolific trafficking operations in modern history. While DC is melting down over the Epstein files, and the rest of the nation, to be very fair, Texas Republicans are busy rigging the 2026 elections in plain sight. Yeah, so here's our little Texas segment. The latest special session was pitched as technical corrections to voting maps. In reality, it's a full-on gerrymander refresh to carve up Black, Latino, and urban districts and lock the GOP into power for another decade. Because Trump demanded 5 extra GOP congressional seats to shore up his razor-thin U.S. House majority. Democrats used the one tool that they had left to break quorum by leaving the state so the House could not legally function. It's a constitutional move, but the Republicans are acting like it's treason. The retaliation has been pure authoritarian theater. They called in a bomb threat to the hotel that the Dems were staying in Illinois. Governor Abbott issued a civil arrest warrant for absent Democrats. Republicans have filed lawsuits in Illinois to try to enforce Texas arrest orders out of state, something that's never been done. The Texas Supreme Court is being asked to expel lawmakers for leaving, another unprecedented move. Attorney General Ken Paxton, still under indictment for securities fraud, still under FBI investigation for corruption, is leading the charge. On August 8th, he got a Tarrant County judge to block Beto O'Rourke and his Powered by People group from financially supporting the Democrats in exile. Paxton accused them of deceptive fundraising and called the effort the Beto bribe buyouts. The injunction dropped less than 4 hours after his office filed it. Beto fired back the same day, suing Paxton in El Paso and accusing him of going on a fishing expedition, constitutional rights be damned. His point? Paxton is trying to make examples out of anyone who dares to fight back, especially voter registration groups that threaten the GOP control. And the hypocrisy here is jaw-dropping. Paxton, who literally fled from his own subpoena in 2022, hiding in a truck driven by his wife, now claims that Democrats are violating the Constitution for using quorum breaks. Meanwhile, Republicans are running the most aggressive partisan redistricting operation in the country, while Texans deal with real crises. Central Texas flood recovery, rural hospitals closing, teacher shortages, water privatization fights over the Carrizo and Wilcox aquifers instead of fixing any of it. They are rewriting the rules so voters cannot kick them out. And when you zoom out, this is not a Texas problem. It's the playbook for cementing one-party rule nationwide. While Texas GOP leaders are busy redrawing these maps to lock in political power, another theft is completely brewing, this time underground. The Carrizo and Wilcox aquifers, which supply drinking water to millions across East Texas, are now in the crosshairs of Conservation Equity Management, a private company led by hedge fund manager Kyle Bass. Just last month, Bass's team filed for permits to drill massive well fields into the aquifers, aiming to pump and sell the water to cities and industrial buyers, miles away. Residents say the state is fast-tracking approvals without full environmental review, despite warnings from hydrologists that overpumping could permanently damage the water table. The backlash is growing. County commissioners in multiple counties have passed resolutions opposing the project. Local water districts are scrambling to assert control, and even Wayne Sanderson Farms, one of the largest poultry producers in the U.S., has joined the opposition over fears of losing a stable water source. This isn't just about ecosystems. These aquifers recharge slowly, and draining them could trigger water rationing, higher utility bills, and contamination from saltwater intrusion. Once the water is gone or compromised, it's gone for good, and the profits will have already left town. In short, while Republicans scream border security and election integrity, they are greenlighting a billionaire's plan to sell off Texas's drinking water supply. This week has been a masterclass on how the powerful keep power. Bomb threats during redistricting, lawmakers breaking quorum just to give voters a fighting chance, Ken Paxton running from subpoenas while pretending he's the sheriff of democracy, and courtrooms bending over backwards to silence people like Beto O'Rourke who dare to fund the resistance. And while they're at it, they're gutting medical research, greenlighting deportations with no due process, and building detention camps and endangered habitats without a single environmental review. None of this is happening by accident. It is coordinated, it's deliberate, and it's meant to make you so overwhelmed you tune out. And that's exactly why we cannot. Because while they move in the shadows, there are people and groups moving in the light, and you can be one of them. I recently was registered with Powered by People to be a volunteer deputy registrar. I just got reciprocity in Kaufman County, and I'm going to be working on getting counties around me as well, so that way I can go to registration fairs, so I can go to events and I can help register people. I'm planning on going to my church and registering people there as well. So don't let them forget about us. Please keep getting involved. If you're in Texas, work with Powered by People. They will help you online become a VDR, and they will reach out to you and they will have you help them with events to get as many people registered as possible. They have them multiple times a week. You can find it on Mobilize. And knocking on the doors, the GOP would rather stay closed. That is not just activism, that's infrastructure, and that's how we win. They are counting on your exhaustion. They want you to believe that this is too broken to fix, that your district has already decided that your voice is just background noise in the chaos. It's not. You have the power every time you register someone, every time you show up to a meeting, every time you make it harder for them to pass their agenda in silence. So here's your call to action. Get trained, register voters. Talk to people who have never been asked about an election before. Show up to city council meetings. Be the person who makes others realize that you are not alone in this fight. We are not the minority here. We are the majority. And when we organize block by block, district by district, they cannot outspend, outlie, or outmaneuver us. We don't wait for hope to land in our laps. We make it, we build it, and we hand it to the next person so that they can run even further with it. This is our time, and if we use it, it's also our win. I'm going to post the link to the Powered by People VDR registration. I had Julie, she's wonderful. Guys, I don't know. This is a lot. We'll make it through. I really hope. I don't know. I'm struggling. I need to end this, but I'm so distraught by everything happening. Like, I really am. And I'm really bummed. And I don't want to be. But I think we've got this. I don't know. Just get out there. Find your local Democratic county meeting. Go to it. Meet people. They're going to be amazing. Go to a protest. Go meet those people. Take your kids. Just do it.